All right, everybody, welcome back to Destination Unknown. Lucky episode number 13. I'm here with Jason from CSMiller Books in Norwich, New York. He's going to show you. He's going to
There
show
it is.
you where he's from.
You guys been on, this is the Pacific Ocean here, and then here's Norwich.
He is that far from the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah. You got Cincinnati on here, and China,
Yeah.
and San Francisco, and Seattle. And this, the funny thing is that this map was made by Norwich Pharmaceuticals, which was at one point a part of Procter and Gamble. So those capitalist fuckers, they came in the early '80s, bought out our pharmaceutical industry, and collapsed it, and everybody moved.
Yeah, that poster looks like a 1982 special.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's right from that same time period. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, every city had one of those in '82.
Well, that's out.
Yeah. Before we get started, introduce yourself to the audience. Let them know a little bit of where you are, located, the type of store you have, and then we're going to get into the wonderful showcasing of your business.
Yeah, thanks so much. Well, hey, Max, thanks a lot for having us. We're super stoked to be here.
Always.
My name is Jason Miller. I am unknown, really. I'm a madman. I started a brick and mortar bookshop in a small rural town. I'm about 3 hours from New York City. I'm about 4 hours from Boston, about 4 hours from Philadelphia, 3 hours from Buffalo, an hour south of Syracuse, an hour north of Binghamton. So I'm kind of right smack dab in the middle of, the mid-Atlantic. I'm basically in the middle of New York State, basically. So I'm on the cusp of central New York, the Leatherstocking region, the Finger Lakes Trails, and the Appalachian Mountains stop right here in my backyard. And, that's kind of, aside from Norwich Pharmaceuticals, which invented Pepto-Bismol, I say that because everybody wants to know what we're famous for, and everybody's here full of shit. So we invented Pepto-Bismol, which has been a great tool for a long time for a lot of people.
But you're right off the Appalachian Trail, though.
The AT, we have a connector to the AT on the Finger Lakes Trail. The Finger Lakes Trail has about 72 miles through here. We're an outdoors person's paradise. Gotcha. I can go out literally in the back of the shop. There is a greenway trail that runs along the river that lots of fishers, bikers, hikers, dog walkers, they hang out on. I'm about a 5-minute pedal from the trailhead to our mountain bike system. So we have about 32 miles of mountain biking here. And like I said, we have a river here, which is full of fish and kayaking. And we have tons of wilderness all around us. We're outside the radius of any nuclear facility fallout. So this is why I ended up in Norwich, New York. Actually,
I know where to go now.
I love it here. It's a beautiful place. It's a community. And, there hasn't been a bookstore here for 20 years. Growing up here, the bookstore was my shelter. Whenever I wanted to disconnect from my friends or, kind of get out of this heat or the street, I would end up at the bookstore or the library. And there wasn't one here. And I think that bookstores are a cultural cornerstone to any community, because there's so much to learn over here in my shop and on the shelves behind me. So we've opened up about 9 months ago. We're in the museum district of Norwich. We have I'm right around the corner from the Northeast Classic Car Museum, which has the largest collection of Duesenbergs on the planet. It's a huge, massive, giant warehouse. It used to be a shoe factory, believe it or not. We used to manufacture shoes here as well for Buster Brown and Clark's. And so they converted it into a car museum. And there's a railroad museum, because there used to be railroads that run through here. And then there's the Chenango County Historical Society. So I'm right around the corner from those in a small residential neighborhood.
I have a feeling you're in a great area for a book town.
I think I'm in the perfect location. I'm not in our downtown area. Right. Like, I'm a little bit off the beaten path. And I did that kind of by design, due to the, some of the urban challenges that we have as a small city. We're a small city with, ourselves in the combining area making up about 13,000 people. So it's kind of small, but I'm just over the hill from the Hall of
Right.
Fame. Like I said, there's a lot going on in the area here.
Right, but historically speaking, you probably have a great time picking books because of the age of
Oh yeah.
New England where you are and all of the towns surrounding you.
Oh yeah. I mean, there are so many small, quaint, historic towns. I mean, one of the best picks that I had over the winter was a mansion that was owned and built by an abolitionist who started a fishing line company. And it was just an amazing pick, and I found some really weird stuff there. I think my best score, after you pick, the picks are great. They're fun because you're like in it. You're like, okay, I'm gonna take. You're just grabbing and boxing up and loading up stuff. And I don't know about you, but I've got a little city van, and I can hold about 3,000 books in that bad boy if I organize them right. But you have to catalog all this stuff when you get it back to the shop because you don't know what you might know some of the things, but you stacking other stuff in there. Sure. As I'm walking out the door, the guy hands me these two really heavy books, and I'm like, like they were like yearbooks. I'm like, whatever. I'll I'm taking them just to be gracious. And they're the last things that I cataloged. In fact, the very last thing that I cataloged is a college yearbook for this guy. His name is Tennessee Williams.
And Mr. Williams, the writer.
Mr. Williams, the writer, right. And so the cool thing about this yearbook is that it actually contains his first ever words in print. Wow. It was a poem. He was a member of the Poetry Society. And again, like I picked probably about 2,000 books out of this old ass mansion. I left these on the floor in the attic, and for whatever reason, this dude brought them down, and they were the last things that I cataloged. And lo and behold, there's the.
Okay, I gotta pause you on that. I got a million questions now. I understand cataloging, understand how that is important and needs to be, but when you have a yearbook in front of you, of course, in the back of your mind, could there be someone famous in that yearbook? So what was your process for discovering that, number one? Because as soon as you realize you have Tennessee Williams, at what point do you realize you have Tennessee Williams? I don't want to say first published poem, but an early Tennessee Williams writing.
Yeah, so it's a great question. Well, first of all, the yearbooks aren't necessarily named after the university. So like I had no idea that it was the university because it has a weird name like Savarti or some weird name. And so like I Googled it, and it was the university, and I was like, okay, well, like how about what year? I put it all in, and they're like, and then of course it comes up like, hey, like there's several other of these floating around, not very many. And so then you start deep diving. It's like, okay, so Tennessee Williams is in this yearbook, and so now you're opening it up. You're in the back of the index, and you're like, yeah. And it wasn't Tennessee. Well, it's Tennessee Williams, but his name is I can't remember his name off the top of my head. But you look in the index, you start looking for bibliographical references. Lots of people use different tools like the OLDC or the Rare Book Exchange, or right. A lot of people use Via Libre or whatever tools they have. There's a few different tools that people use to kind of find bibliographical information, and that's how it shakes out like that. And sometimes you don't find any information. Like if you have a book that comes in from the 1700s, or if you have a book from the 1700s, you pick it up, you don't know anything about it, and you have to build a network. And so one of the great things that I have managed to do over the last several years is build a nice network of people, because I was doing book shows and selling only on Instagram for
prior to owning the store. Sure. Okay.
Yeah, for several years, but it comes down to learning all of these things and knowing the right people to ask. I'm on the Antiquarian Bookseller Association path, so I am connected with people at the ABAA, and I reach out to my mentors, ask them different questions. and they may not necessarily know the answer, but they know who specializes in it, and if they don't, they'll know somebody that it does. And so, one of the most rewarding things about the book business is that it's a really small world in a really big world, because there's so many books, and not anybody can know everything about every book that's ever been printed. So there are so many niche players that are just filled with all kinds of great information, and it's great to make those connections, not just through the ABAA, but also like that's from the antiquarian side. But there's a lot of really dope literature that's coming out, that's came out in the last several years, and even vintage stuff and contemporary stuff. And Bookstagram has been great for learning about new things and new authors and stuff like that.
So I take it then you are a fan of social media because this was how you were earning your keep prior to the bookstore. So what was the impetus from, were you at home selling?
Yes. So let me give you the backstory, right? So I'll give you the backstory.
You're already smirking at me. I know we got a good story coming up.
It's an interesting story. I'm not a fan of social media. In fact, after you consume this podcast, don't forget to follow and like and over there and over there. Do all that stuff to support us, because we're just real people, which is cool. But before this, I didn't have social media. I'd been off social media for years. It's just really, you have to. So I'm not a fan of social media outside of all of the great things that it's done for me. I don't like all the bad, negative health things that it's done to a lot of our kids. That's all they've known, right? You and I, we're a little bit older. Thank God we grew up when there wasn't all that bullshit with cell phones and social media, hot or not, all that bullshit, right? So I didn't have any social media, but what happened was I had been hanging out at auctions, live in-person auctions, buying books, and there was always this other guy there that was bidding against me usually. Fortunately, we live in kind of a smallish area. The man who was bidding against me is a high school history teacher, and his daughter was one of my best friends growing up.
Okay.
So I'd always be like, "Hey, Mr. Bryden, how's it going?" And so we would kind of bid against each other. And one day I got a phone call from Tom, and he said, "Hey, look, right there in Norwich, there was an antiquarian bookseller, and he passed away. His grandson, I taught his grandson, and he's trying to get rid of all these books. I don't have the time, blah, blah, blah. Are you interested?" And I was like, well, and at this point in time, I had probably a collection of maybe 5,000 to 10,000 books. And I was like, well, let's see. I had a good career going and stuff like that. So I was like, sure, I'll go take a look. And so I ended up again in this old ass, in a carriage barn. Now, a carriage barn probably from the early 1800s. Okay. Upstairs, it's November. And my daughter had just been born 2 weeks beforehand. And this younger guy, he's like, yeah, just make me an offer. And I was like, $500, man. And he was like, okay. And so I was just like, bing! I was like, oh shit, this just got real.
Yeah, now you got to do the work.
So at that point in time, I didn't have my bookmobile, so I had to rent a U-Haul, and I called a bunch of friends, and it's November, it's fucking snowing out. There's a foot of snow on the ground, and it wasn't easy to get up into the top of this carriage barn to begin with. But I didn't have any place. My partner was like, "You're not bringing those to the house. You're not loading up the basement full of your book shit," I think is the words that I heard. And so I'm scrambling. I'm like, "Hey, dude, just give me a couple days." So a buddy of mine had a warehouse, an old Norwich pharmaceutical warehouse. And I was like, "Hey, man, I kind of just I need a place to store some books for the winter." I still have about 20,000 books over there, by the way. This is going on 5 years now. But
little by little.
Yeah, he was like, sure. So, and that was my first big pick, or haul, if you will. And it was all vintage and antique stuff. And I made the decision before I made the offer that if he accepted my offer, that I was going to go for it. And I would just start selling online. And, I seen some things with regards to social media selling. I didn't want to kind of do the eBay path. I've sold stuff on eBay. Everybody sold stuff on eBay and Craigslist. And so I was like, I'm just going to try it just on Instagram. And, I started posting books on Instagram. And I just kept posting books on Instagram. And every day I would go over to the warehouse. I would find a handful of books. I would kind of try to figure out what they were worth, because at that point in time, I just knew I just needed to get an ROI.
Right.
And then I found a couple of books that were relatively valuable. And then it just turned into gravy, man. So I started selling books. My follower count went up. I built that all organically. I have I think I have a fair amount of followers that are consistent. I don't think I'm overboard. It doesn't matter anyways. Once you get to 20,000 followers, the engagement's the same. So I pretty much only sell on Instagram.
Right. But your first book pick set you up to have a bookstore right off the bat.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
And then
one thing led to another, right? So I'm selling books. I'm getting I get a phone call from this buddy of mine who's a lawyer. Some random person passed away. He's like, hey, come over to this house, also here in Norwich. I go over there. A lot of people is where I picked up a lot of followers. It was a book order house. And so I was in there, boxing and cleaning in the book order house. And I got a ton of follows and views on that. And oh my God, I mean, it was, I pulled 25,000 books out of that house.
And had they passed away?
They had passed away. Yeah.
So, I mean, let's talk about that real quick, because it's not really a subject people talk about, but I mean, for me, especially down here in South Florida, this happens all the time. I walk into people's homes where people have passed away, and you're getting their lifelong book collection.
It's amazing, right? It's just 9 times out of 10. Like what I found, so this guy that passed away, he had a daughter. He lived in China at one point in time. He had a daughter and was married to a Chinese woman. But just going through these people's book collections, you learn more about that person than most people really even know.
Yeah.
And it's incredible what you learn about people just by looking at the books that they have on their shelves, whether they read them or not. That idea or that connectivity was there.
But you can also, with the collection I just got from Arkansas, he saved every receipt inside the book.
Wow.
And so I know what year he bought this book. I know the name of the bookshop. I mean, and he was global. So I have 1972 receipts from bookshops in Oxford, England that no longer exist. But in my Paper Gold group, it always amazes me. I always tell everybody the books are everywhere. You just have to become not a master, but you got to become a little sleuth-like in learning how to acquire these collections. But they are everywhere.
No, I've made friends with a couple of undertakers.
Sure.
Great way. Having an actual brick and mortar has been amazing. Like I said, I've only been here 9 months, but I've had some really amazing stuff walk through the doors. I had a massive Edward Gorey collection come in, all first editions, some signed. Related artists.
Edward Gorey.
Yeah, everybody knows who Edward Gorey is. Yeah. There it is. That's
signed.
Magic Windows, all kinds of amazing stuff.
Yeah, so hard. It's actually hard to find.
Yeah, so actually, I was just at a book fair, and I sold all that Edward Gorey. and I did really well with it. But I had this one book. It was called Elephant House, and it was inscribed from the author to the owner of the publishing house.
Okay.
And Elephant House is what is known as Gory's house. It's a museum. And it was the only thing that I had left. And I did the Cooperstown Book Fair. I had no Gory. I just had this one book. I happened to sell this one particular book, but everybody else there had Gory. So, so I'm not sure if, but a couple years ago, you wouldn't see that much Gory around, but it's good. It's there. But, book fairs aren't happening all the time. A lot of these guys that do book fairs are not operating brick and mortars. I mean, I did a lot of book fairs before I even did a brick and mortar shop. Right. So having the doors open has brought in a couple of really nice things as some of the people.
Yeah. And are you still the only shop in town now, even now?
I am. Well, kind of. So there is a small not-for-profit. We have like this community like maker space, if you will. There's like a small boutique, a small cafe. There's like a guy who paints shoes, a photographer, a little yoga studio. And they also have a paperback exchange in there, which is a nonprofit for the museums. So they sell paperbacks, but nobody's been taking donations. Like the library hasn't been taking, none of the libraries have been taking. So like, and even I had to be like, I'm sorry, I can't take your books because, no, it's great. People don't want to throw away their books. I get it. I lived it. I never would have thrown away a book, even if it was beat up and ratty. But now I'm like the king of throwing shit in the trash. I'm like, boom, bye, Felicia.
Space and time. Space. It's general physics for us. It's space and time.
Yeah. So I mean, you're picking up massive pallets, right?
Right.
And I mean, shit's showing up. I mean, it's not always peaches and rainbows when it's coming to you. Even new books that I get in because I have a brick and mortar. So I started carrying new books just because, again, you want to get good, fresh stuff out to readers as well. So,
but are you ordering those from the publisher, or are you waiting for those to find the way to your shop from a sourcing trip?
Both.
Okay.
Both. I'll pick up contemporary stuff along the way. Again, those relationships go really far. So like I'm in a book desert, right? Like, so even Binghamton, New York doesn't have an indie bookshop. Utica, New York doesn't have an indie bookshop. There's one guy like in a rural town that has a bookshop, nice one. And there's a couple of indie bookshops in Syracuse.
Sure.
But otherwise, Will Money is over in Cooperstown.
Why is that though? I mean, it's New England. It should be rich with bookshops. Did they all close down at one time? Did they exist?
Yeah, well, when I was growing up, there were two bookshops in this town and a printmaker. So there were actually books. There was a Shenango Union Printing was here and active in this town for almost 120 years, publishing newspapers and books and periodicals and things like that. They sold off everything in the last couple of years. The previous bookshop, First Editions bookshop, she closed about 20 years ago. And then Pauline's, man, I don't know. She went out when I was a kid. So that was back in a while. Like I said, globalism or globalization of markets really kind of changed things. The internet kind of changed things. So, capitalism kind of decimated the human capital from some of these smaller towns, right? Where we had a shoe factory, a large pharmaceutical industry. You get bought out by a larger one, they're going to do what capitalists do. They extract the optimum dollar, and then they move on. The shoe factory, that business, they can pay cheaper labor in another country. So they move it there. And I mean, you're talking, 1,000 jobs. Right. It's a lot of jobs.
Well, my first bookstore job was in the early 90s. And it was at the antiquarian bookshop, the picture I showed you earlier. And I worked there for about a decade, learning the craft without realizing I was learning the craft. I mean, this was before the internet. And I remember about 93, 94, 95, the term eBay and Amazon starting to come into the lexicon of the bookstore language.
Sure.
And I remember a lot of people saying, who is ever going to order a book from the internet or the World Wide Web? Uh,
Yeah,
and so you mentioned it recently. I mean, the world has changed.
sure.
Those two terms, Amazon and eBay, are now part of our daily lexicon.
Sure.
Um, do you do any of that for yourself with the bookstore? Do you post online, eBay or Amazon?
So I am a dot commer. Like I lived in New York through the dot com area. I'm a technologist by trade. I've had a great career in innovating technologies. I love technology. And when these things came out, I was like, yeah, this is great. So, I've sold stuff on eBay. I've bought stuff on eBay. Obviously, I've bought stuff on Amazon. Uh, I think that these were great tools at a given time. But as I've matured and I look around my community, I got out of the city. I got out of the city. I'm up here, and I look around, and as I mature, I'm like, wow, man, like all that tech is really cool. And it was super affordable to do all of these things back in the day. 20 years ago,
Mhm.
doing eBay 20 years ago, that shit was cool. But it has decimated small business.
Yes. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and small business makes up small towns.
Mm.
And if there's no small business, then there's no small towns. And so, I'm on the backside of it. Listen, I get it. There's new platforms popping up all the time, new ways to sell things. But I mean, shit, man. Even a week ago, I got an advertisement from Walmart saying, "Hey, we're going to start this booksellers thing. Bring your books and sell them on Walmart.com." And you know, I don't shop at Walmart. And I haven't shopped at Walmart in probably a good 15, 20 years because they built the super one right outside of town here. And now I know, like, there were department stores in downtown. There were hardware stores here in town. And they don't, I appreciate, what everybody's trying to do. I just, the big corporate gig, I just
Yeah.
can't.
They destroyed a way of life that was prevalent, in mid-century America going forward. And then almost within a decade's time span,
20
they
years, man.
extinguished it.
Yeah,
Uh,
man.
and that's what happened, when I was working in the bookstore in the 90s, and other bookstore owners were saying, "Oh, I'll never sell books on Amazon and eBay." Sadly, they didn't last. They did not pivot with the times. They did not pivot with the technology.
Yeah.
And what was a rare book in 1990 suddenly became not such a rare book when everybody realized they had a copy.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it has been a great equalizer from that perspective. Being able to understand what's available, what's out there.
Mhm.
Those are great things, and I liken it to. I'm gonna put my techno geek hat on, right? Like,
Please.
so if I want to build these platforms out, I want to make them optimal as possible for the end user. And if I have a good experience for the end user, what am I going to get? I'm going to get eyeballs. But at some point in time, the eyeballs became what they're selling. And so they're selling me, they're selling my data because you're getting advertisements, you're getting influence. And listen, I get it. I understand. It makes sense technologically of why you would want your systems to operate the way that they operate. And of course, you have to pay your people. But now again, I'm a .commer, so I can't hate on these guys.
Right.
They're building these platforms, but they're really kind of using human as the kind of the capital. It's not so much what you're selling. It's all about what this person can be sold.
Sure.
And they know.
Yeah.
And so I'm not opposed to any. Listen, there are some fantastic booksellers on eBay. It's keeping a ton of booksellers alive. I'm all for it. But there's a lot of shitheads out there selling shit that they don't know what they're selling, or they're actively deceiving people. I'm on their eBay sales. And so that part of it, I don't particularly like.
Right.
I don't know if it's
you don't
fine.
you don't need a license or a knowledge license to be able to be a seller. And
No.
outside the book world, what I always say is go on eBay and type in signed Salvador Dali and see how many different signatures look alike. I mean, there's 300 different signatures of Salvador Dali. Most things are fake, I would say. And I would forewarn anybody who's looking to buy Salvador Dali not to utilize eBay as their platform.
Listen, I sell books online. I sell them on my website. I have my own website. I manage my back end. I put books up there not as often as I should. I'm not saying I'm great at managing my website or managing my catalogs that should be sent out on a quarterly basis to my email list. So I do use digital tools to engage with what I feel is my customer base and try to procure new customers from that perspective. I've tried Whatnot, see how those things would work out. I mean,
okay.
It's intriguing, man. I mean, listen, I remember getting sucked into watching. I would space out, smoke a bunch of weed, and watch QVC and be like, who's buying that ring for 4 easy payments of $19.95?
They're all in storage units now.
Yeah, no, yeah, for sure, right? But it's coming back to the eBay equation, right? Like if you ask a question, talking about Salvador Dali, for example, and these signatures, I've asked multiple people, what's the provenance of that signature? Right. And they're like, no, we're in Houston. We're not in Providence. And so, just a simple understanding.
Right. That is a funny story, though. That is funny.
And I think that's where having the shop,
right,
having organizations like the ABAA and the ABA, kind of sorts the wheat from the chaff. Again, not saying there aren't a ton of good booksellers out there, but being a part of that is knowledge sharing. There are so many tools that other people have already been through and have already done that can make you a better bookseller, help you learn more about bookselling. And to me, that's half the fun. Is not all the time. I don't want to. I just got a bunch of books in here. I don't want to catalog these freaking books. They're all like socioeconomic stuff, and it's cool, right? That stuff is cool. But today, I don't want to deal with that stuff. I want to deal with my random Tennessee Williams book that kind of comes in and go down a bibliophile wormhole. But I can't do that because I'm trying to sell books.
Do you have an employee or anything like that helping out in the store?
I have had a couple of people that have helped me along the way. I've had like so one my best friend from childhood. He'll come and he'll hang out in the store. Him and my nephew have gone out and loaded up my van and hauled books for me. He'll hang out in the store if I got to run around and do errands, things like that. I had a great friend when I was getting ready to open the shop, just kind of like get me in gear because it was so overwhelming getting the shop open 9 months ago. Like there's 6 months of work going into just where am I putting this stuff on the shelves and how am I laying this out? And I question myself on a regular basis about, what am I doing?
I'm guessing looking behind you, either you or someone put the shelves up for you.
So this bookshop was built completely by me and my brothers.
Yep.
And everything in here, we gutted the whole thing. Well, I gutted the whole place. I bought all the stuff and me and my brother did all the work. So yeah, these bookshelves back here, this is a wall when you come in the door. So this is kind of the first thing you see when you come into the shop. And so we built this. We took 2 bookshelves that I got out of that carriage barn that I pulled some of these shelves out. We cut one down so it fits the height of the wall. So it's about 9 feet. It goes all the way.
That's a great shot. Yeah, that's a great shot. Yep.
Floor to ceiling.
Yep.
And so, it's been a passion of love and labor.
But where's the ladder?
There's no ladder. We do have a stool out in the shop, because there's the main shop area is over there.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
So
Yep.
that's the shop. And I'm on the iPad, so
I
I'm
got
not
you.
to say anything. But yeah, I mean, it's a game changer having a shop, and all the work that goes into it, and all the people like my dad, people in the community. I didn't. None of this is done alone. You know, my family has supported me, and my cockamamie idea. A lot of people are like, "Are you crazy? You're gonna open a bookshop in Norwich?" I'm like, "Yeah, I am." Right. And I'm looking at this wall over here in front of me. I got flyers for the community theater over here. I've got a big. I've got this author coming from the United Kingdom. He's a headmaster of a school. He wrote a book about the Oneida Indian Nation in the latter part of 2023. He's coming to visit the area. I wrote him an email. I'm like, hey, you want to come to my shop and sign some books? And oh, by the way, let me buy 50. I bought 50 of his books. Having this event, I'm working with the Osceola Valley Fishing and Heritage Association and the Shenango County Historical Association to host it. And
you have roots in this town. That's why it's important to you.
Sure.
Having roots is such an attribute, because I'm sure you're also getting weekly phone calls from people you haven't heard from in 32 years who know you have a bookshop.
No, actually, that's not the case.
Okay.
What I found, what has been the most remarkable thing about having a bookshop is all of the new people that have moved to the area in the last 3 years. It's been insane. People have moved here from North Carolina so that they can be closer to their company that's in Canada. People from Kansas moved here to buy a 100-acre blueberry farm. People have moved here to take jobs with the yogurt factory. People have just moved here to get out of New York City in that rat race.
But Norwich is a growing community then. The population is on the rise.
Yeah, I mean, from what I can tell, there's a lot of really awesome people moving here from all over, from Texas and Minnesota. It's Montana. It's been great meeting all these new people, and then there are the swaths of the readers that exist that you don't know, that kind of come out of the woodwork. And it's such a small. That's what I try to tell people. Like they think that you're in a small community, and there are a lot of really awesome things about living here. It's like, I know who the school teachers are that are teaching my kids.
Right.
I know who my neighbors are, literally around the block. I had some work to do at the county office building today, which we're the county seat. The county clerk, I've known him since we were kids. It's interesting moving back here myself,
right?
Choosing to live here so that I can do something exactly like this, which is provide another component to our culture, to our art, and make it a better place. Like I said, I'm on the Greenway. I'm on our walking path and trail. It's out back.
I can tell you love it. The vibe is you're very much a man who's at peace and know he's made the right move and loves what he wakes up to do every day. That's the vibe you're giving off.
Thank you. Well,
yeah.
I do love it. And I've wanted to be a bookstore guy since I was a kid. I was all geared up to go to college and get an English degree and be the next Tom Robbins, if you will. He's one of my favorites at the time. When I was a kid, I remember just like reading everything by Tom Robbins, because Still Life with Woodpecker was about the outlaw anarchist red-haired wild child, right? And he turned out to be one of the raddest dudes on the planet. And so I was down that path, and when it was time to go to school, it's kind of like, my folks were like, we don't have any money. being from a socioeconomically challenged background, I had limited options about what I could do. And, my parents had a bunch of kids. They weren't going to go out of their way for me to figure out how they can get me into college.
Right.
And, I talked to the Army recruiter, and man, I had a tremendous experience in the military. Very formative time in my life. Met some amazing people who are still lifelong friends today.
How many years?
Just 4 years.
Okay. Not just that's a chapter of a life.
Yeah, it sure was. Sure was. It kind of catapulted me into, my career, and it gave me money to go to college and go into New York and innovate, man. I've been hacking systems, for, 28 years. I love technology. I love innovating. I'll humble brag here. Everybody has one of these in their pocket, right? Mm-hmm. So all of the technology that's in this device, every single person in the world that has a smartphone, that technology came out of my research lab, man. We built it, we made it, we prototyped it in these big giant things. We made it all work. We made it all cool. And
what time frame is that? Give us a prehistory of that.
Oh shit, man. I mean, this is 2010. 2008, 2013. I was running a research lab, for one of the largest carriers out there. So, yeah, But
when I was a high school teacher, my first few years was teaching before there were cell phones in the classroom, and then I saw what happened once cell phones became in abundance, and what they did to teachers in the classroom. So I saw the beauty and the horror.
Dude, get the fucking device out of your kid's hand, man. Get the device out of your hand.
Hey, you don't have to tell me this. I know that I watched it. I watched it from a desk classroom for 18 years. I mean, it destroyed teaching. It destroyed teaching.
Well, I guess if that's the case, I have to give kudos to my local schools, because I think 3 of the local schools, maybe even more, here locally, they're banning phones.
Yeah.
You got a phone locker, you have to check your phone.
Yeah. I hope that becomes the norm nationally. I don't know if it will be, but it needs to be, because, nationally our reading and our math scores are plummeting by the year, and we are dropping in rank according to country every year. And I don't know how bad it needs to be before we make changes.
Yeah. We have, I mean, you see it now, right? And books, I'm glad you brought this up, because books are an educational gateway.
Right.
Anybody can come into my bookshop and learn something from a book that's out there, affordably, cheap. And what's more important is that they're learning on their time and what they want to learn. And that's what books did for me. Like, being an old school hacker, we had this thing called read the fucking manual, right? Like, so you had to read and understand how these systems worked. And I was nerded out, man. I was blown away by all this cool technology and figuring out how to actually make it work and build it and do all that thing. Any kid, listen, if any kid comes through my door, if you ride a skateboard or a bicycle over here, you're getting discounts, right? Like, if some kid came in here with a skateboard and was like, yo, I don't really have money, but I just want to look around, I'm going to give that kid a book, bro. You know what I'm saying?
Can you imagine if he walks in and asks you for a Kerouac?
I got it.
Take it.
I got it, man. Here it is, bro.
I'll see you next week. We'll talk about it.
Yeah, you got to. I'm going to give this to you, but you better come back and tell me what you liked and didn't like about it, right? I want to hear about it, man. Like, you're on the right path to being cool, bro. So let me help you along the way. But really, one of the things that I plan to do here later on in the summer, I'm working on it, is I need to make this a space for alternative educators, because so many people are starting to reset and be like, yo, I got to take the power back. And kudos to them. I think a lot of people send their kids to school because it's a babysitter. Sure. But man, like, your kid, like, I know, like, my daughter's 4, by the way. she is probably, she can carry on a conversation with a person and not be like this.
Right.
You talk to them and they're like this, like zombied the fuck out. God damn. But this is a place, you know, you want to learn Montessori style, you know, whatever the different styles of teaching and educating are, we're here for you. We support you. Again, cornerstone to education. You know, we got John Taylor Gatto over there. You know, he wrote about dumbing us down, man. And I live in New York. They do a good job putting curriculums out. Right. You know, but there's a new wave of teachers. A lot of these teachers, they're dumb. I'm sorry, you're dumb. Like, you're just dumb. But that being said, for every 10 dumb teachers, there's probably 1 or 2 or 3. There's actually, I lie. There's just taking on teaching in itself is admirable, but not many people can actually teach.
Part of the problem is, even in my case, I enjoy teaching. I taught senior English and reading, and I actually enjoyed teaching, but it's so unrewarding as a profession.
Oh shit, yeah.
Of course, the pay scale, as you know, is mediocre at best. And so teachers are leaving in droves now. So these school systems across the country, these counties, they just need bodies now. They just need bodies.
For real.
Yeah.
No, 100%. But you think about it. What are the smart kids going to do?
Right.
What are the smart kids going to do? They're going to go make money.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, why would I get it?
But they learn that from the phones and the internet.
Well, this is true too. But it's like, well, but why am I going to take a job for $42,000? Right. Very few people are going to do that.
Yeah. I left teaching because selling books part-time was making 4 times the money as my teaching salary. Sure. And I was 18 years in, and I said, there's no way I'm going 12 more.
Yeah.
Not at $57,000 a year.
Yeah. Some of these kids are assholes. Yeah. I mean, big time.
Yeah. I never had, I mean, I love teaching. I never had a problem with it, but I was enjoying the same thing you were enjoying, selling books on Instagram. I was just enjoying selling books. And I still marvel at what I do every day now. I marvel at it. The fact that I can talk to you, you know, we've had a relationship sort of on Instagram. We, you know, liked each other's things, but the fact that I can now come into a Zoom call and become friends with you and have a little banter session about books and the world is an amazing thing for me to do in life now.
Yeah. So before we wrap up, I know we're probably running out of time because I talk a lot. I'm a very, very verbose guy. I just want to say that as much as kids are assholes, we have a tremendous opportunity to engage with them and show them a different path. And that's why I'm here in this bookshop.
Okay.
And my commitment to the kids in my community doesn't stop there. I'm deeply embedded in the Little League program and have been for over 15 years. I've coached high levels of baseball. I think I was the 2017 Youth Volunteer of the Year for my county. Nothing is more important to me than the education of our children. And what you can't get in your schools, ask your teachers, because a lot of them know about it. And a lot of teachers come here, but I got you covered. And the most amazing events that I've had in my bookshop have been from these incredibly talented kids and the poetry sessions that they've come here and read. And here's a fun fact. This is really cool about all these. If you're one of those poets that came here and shared your amazing poetry with the world through Bernstein's the local English teacher who's been here for like 40 years, no joke. His teacher, his college professor was Allen Ginsberg. And so little do you know, you're a 3rd-degree separation from Allen Ginsberg.
From the beatniks. Yeah, from the beatniks.
That's how close you are to the beatniks. In 2024, man. Some of these kids are amazing. And they're so smart, man.
So are you keeping the beat poetry in the store for them? As much
Yeah,
as
there's
you
tons
can?
of it out there.
Yeah.
You know what? The beats are great, but the beats are beat. Let's step back. Edna St. Vincent Millay, I
Okay.
love her.
Yeah.
If she was alive today, I would be trying to find some way to get on her radar.
Yeah.
Like,
I feel the
hey,
same way about Emily Dickinson. So I understand it. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
so there's the beats are great. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of really fun stuff in there, but we've created a lot of really good stuff
Yeah.
in the last 20 years. Throughout the 80s, throughout the 70s, a lot of great stuff, and even before, America and the world in general, and literature, whether it's poetry or writing, dude, people are putting out some amazing stuff.
Yeah.
Like, like,
But I still think you can give a kid Ginsberg Supermarket in California and they're gonna like it.
yeah,
They're gonna
for sure.
understand that poem, even though it was written 60 years ago.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. They're
Yeah.
on that path.
Yeah.
They're
One of the
smart.
favorite books I love teaching, I love teaching Johnny Got His Gun by Dalton Trumbo. And that, everyone, no one talks about World War I anymore. And
No.
here's the greatest anti-war novel of all time.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
so I always enjoyed teaching that when I was allowed.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
you're in Florida, man.
Yeah. Well, this was before that, and I was teaching special English classes. So I had a little bit of privilege to do that.
Yeah. You have to write a lot of letters, get a lot of acceptance. Sometimes you have to send a note home to the parents. There's a lot of bureaucrats involved, right? So maybe we got rid of some of those administrators. We could shift some of that money to the teachers, because the teachers are the ones that actually deserve the money. And if we can give the teachers more money, then we're going to get a higher caliber
Right.
of teachers.
Oh yes, yeah. I'll tell you a quick little funny story. Towards the tail end of my career, I asked my principal. I said I wanted to teach a class on building an eBay store to high school students. I said I was doing six figures then as a high school teacher. I was doing six figures as a bookseller, and
Sure.
I wanted to teach kids not just books, but how to build an eBay store and a following and market yourself, whether it was clothes or whatnot. And the district came back to me and said kids were not allowed to earn money while in school. And I'm like, you guys have it so backwards, you have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, this is exactly what John Taylor Gatto did, man. He guerrilla educated these kids. Like, he's like, write a business plan. Like, what do you think you want to do? Like,
Sure.
And that's how he ended up with like this 200-acre farm, like 10 miles down the road, and he won New York Teacher of the Year award. Like, some kid in his class like wrote a thing, and he bought the land for like $2 with this kid in his class. It was crazy stories, man. But that's what John Taylor Gatto, Dumbing Us Down. Everybody should read that book. And it's amazing. No disrespect to teachers, man. They are, man. They're dude. Some of these kids today, they wilding out, man. They don't have any respect.
Right.
And if I didn't call somebody, even today, like my English teacher, I've been doing stuff with my English teacher. I'm like, hey, Mr. Forpeston, hey, Mr. Bernstein, like, because I in the back of my mind, my foster dad will come down and yoke me for, like, if I called this guy Mike or Rich. Right. I'll just get yoked.
And Instagram and Twitter and X, it hasn't helped, because now we get to see, these kids record everything going on in the classroom. And so now we get an inside scoop to the issues in the classroom. And it's very sad to me. I'm happy to be out because I love what I do now, and I'm on the right path, as I know you feel you are.
It sounds like you're slaying it, bro.
Yeah, I love it. I love it every day. So yeah, you and I can go on for about 4 hours on this conversation.
Yeah, probably.
But I got to end it here. I got one last question for you. You know what it's going to be? The name of the show is
New York Yankees.
Unknown.
It's the Yankees. The Yankees.
What's that?
What's the question? The Yankees?
No, that's never the question. I'm a Red Sox.
Oh, Jesus! If I would have known that ahead of time, I never would have agreed to this.
The name of the show is Destination Unknown, of course, from the band Missing Persons. That song, that's our intro. So I just visit brick and mortar bookstores. I never know where I'm going to go next. So where are you sending me off to?
So I'm going to send you to Mike James of Grizzly Pulp in Oakland, California.
I've been to Oakland and this is awesome. I'm going back to California. Excellent.
I'm a big, former skateboarder, punk rock, anarchist kid. You are going to have a great time. Mike has been in the industry for a very long time, and he definitely has some really amazing stories, and is generally a wealth of information of book selling as an industry as a whole from the 80s on. But before I close out, can I just say,
you can say whatever you need to. Sure.
Listen, I want to say thank you to all of the awesome booksellers that have helped me along the way. There are too many to list, but I'm going to say Sunday and Josh B&B, Phil, the book peddler out in Smithville, Dave Pedersen out in Rockford, Illinois.
Oh, yeah.
Richard,
how cool is Dave? How cool is Dave and his wife?
Dude, they're
salt of the earth, though. Salt of the earth.
Some days I'm like, how did this motherfucker get so cool? Like how? Like I think I'm kind of cool, but that's kind of lame. But I mean, I'm like, that's a cool motherfucker. But same experience, man. The army, the army changes you. But thank you so much to so many people. Thank you, Max, so much for having me. We're thrilled that we could participate. You've had some really awesome interviews on here, and I'm just thrilled to be part of that community. And hopefully, we'll be here for a while again.
And I am excited to have finally actually physically met and talked with you. I know we've been following each other on the social media.
Yeah, same.
I'm always liking your stuff, and it feels good to actually make a friend now. And so if I ever visit Phil, I know I got to come your way. And so
I got an Airbnb upstairs. We'll put you up.
It's perfect. It's perfect. So I'm gonna you'll see me in Oakland, California next week. Then this episode will be live next week on YouTube. Just come back and look at the comments on YouTube. People are always making comments. Sometimes there are questions you need to answer, not me. And I love this conversation. I have a feeling I'm coming back to you.
All right. Well, let's go off into the unknown then. Thanks a lot, Max.
Bye, brother.
Be well.